Hello, my name is Laurel Dossman, and I am here to do a presentation on primary music education and the development of social emotional competency and literacy and academic literature translation for teachers and administrators. Today we will be looking at two different studies. The first one is by Jeremic et al. And he is a Croatian scholar whose studies took place in primary schools in Serbia. He studied the effects of applying vocal performance teaching methods on socially emotional competencies of children in early education. We will also be looking at E. Glenn Schellenberg, who is a professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Toronto. He runs the Music and Cognition Lab in the U of T Mississauga campus. His article is on group music training and children's pro-social skills. The Schellenberg article looks at the academic question, is group music training in childhood associated with pro-social skill development? And Jeremic's article looks at what are the effects of applying the vocal performance teaching method on social emotional competencies of second grade pupils in elementary education? For the Schellenberg study, the participants were in third and fourth grade in public schools in a major Canadian city. The sample comprised of 49 girls and 35 boys who were on average 8 years old and 8 months old. English was the native language for 90% of the children. Jeremic's study was a sample of second grade primary students in Serbia. A total of 89 students were included in the study, 44 from one school and 45 from another school. For the Schellenberg study, they measured vocabulary using the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test, the 4th edition, emotional comprehension by using the 7 of the 9 subtests of the test of emotion comprehension, sympathy using the 6-item child report sympathy scale, and pro-social skills using the 10 pro-social items from the social behavior questionnaire. For the Jeremic study, they used the social emotional competency scale for assessment of social emotional competencies of students, or also known as SEC. SEC is composed of 22 items that look at empathy, the relation to other students, especially from marginalized groups, impulse and negative emotional reaction control, presence and expression of positive emotional reactions, collaboration with other students, student reaction to criticism, and emotional reactions of students. For the Schellenberg study, they did their original testing in the fall of 2012, and they did their secondary testing in the summer of 2013. All measures were administered on both occasions. Children were tested individually in a quiet room. Children received music programming for 40 minutes a week throughout the school year, and the teacher used the ukulele program called Ukulele in the Classroom. For the Jeremic study, the experimental groups had music class once a week for the school year. It was a vocal choral program taught by a music specialist. The control group used the same music education classes and time frame, but it was carried out by a classroom teacher who used pre-recorded music instead of singing the music to the children. At the beginning of the experiment, both groups were subjected to the initial test, and after one school year, to the final test. The study was conducted using the Scale for Assessment SEC of students. For both of these studies, some of the limitations include having small sample sizes. This is only a short-term analysis of 1 year. Instead of looking at the long-term effects of this type of programming, it can't fully take into account unknown variables that could have influenced the outcomes of these studies. And there may be evaluator bias, either from the parent, the teacher, or the student when filling out the questionnaires that might affect the outcomes of these studies. In the Schellenberg study, they found that students who were provided the programming showed larger gains in their pro-social score and sympathy scores compared to the control groups. Students who initially scored low showed greater gains in both of these scores than students who initially scored high levels of aptitude in both of these categories. For the Yerimic study, Yermick found that the students who received music programming from a music specialist had larger gains in their social emotional competency growth than the control group who received programming from their classroom teacher. We can pull two main conclusions from these two articles and data sets. The first is that students who receive primary music programming, whether vocal or instrumental, show increases in their social emotional competency scores after the programming. Another conclusion that we can pull from this is that music specialists teaching music programming show larger gains in the social emotional competencies than non-music specialists teaching the same type of programming. Looking forward at this area of research, I think it would be really interesting to do longitudinal studies on the long-term growth of socially emotional competencies for students who do receive music programming versus students who do not. There has only been small studies done with small population sizes, and doing a larger one across a larger population over a longer period of time, I think would be very beneficial for the area. I hope you learned something today about social emotional competencies in elementary music education classes. And here are my references for this presentation. Thank you so much for listening.